right, Michael, let's start here. How did we get here? How did Republicans come to have so much control over redistricting?
Well, really, in a number of southern states, Democrats tried to win a seat at the table both in 2018 and 2020, either winning a governor's race or winning control of one or both chambers of the legislature, and fell short. And so unlike in states like Pennsylvania or Wisconsin, where you now have divided government in the South, and especially the big four states of the South, Texas, Georgia, North Carolina, Florida, you once again will have unified Republican control of the process. And that means that they basically will be able to do whatever they want when it comes to redistricting. Now, there are some challenges, right? Because, the suburbs are getting more diverse, and it's a little bit harder than it used to be to draw maps. But, they will have to make basically a choice about whether they want to play it safe and, get a large number of seats, or they want to go for the gusto. And so that's sort of the challenge. And, because if they're too risky, then they could end up doing what's called a dummy manor, where districts end up flipping to the other party by the end of the decade, or they could play it a little safer. So they have some tough choices in places like Texas and Georgia in particular.
Sochi, it strikes me that on that list of states that Michael just rattled off, there are a lot of the same states we talk about that are currently trying to pass voter suppression laws, and we have, for a very good reason, been focused on voting rights. Where do you see redistricting playing into this broader effort to control electoral outcomes?
Well, I think Texas has always been a repeated offender of voting rights. In 2012, you saw that the Department of Justice challenged their voter ID law, challenged the redistricting maps, and now the Voting Rights Act has been gutted. And so you see the Texas legislature is actually going to meet this week because Greg Abbott has called them back to pass their voter suppression law that would limit voting, that would also make it easier to overturn an election. And I think states like Texas, they need to be careful because they can still get a lawsuit under Section 2. So I'm looking at states like Texas, who are repeated offenders of voting rights in the era of a gutted Voting Rights Act. Yet you still saw Attorney General Merrick Garland say that he's not going to stand for that and that he will continue to use all the tools in his arsenal in order to challenge that. So states have to be careful here. You can't necessarily draw lines and discriminate against African-American and Latino voters, or you will get a challenge.
Michael, I want you to talk to me about what you laid out earlier, this idea that they have to choose how big to go, how hard to play. What is the calculus there?
Well, the secret to doing successful gerrymander is you don't want to draw districts that your party wins by 80%, because then you're using your voters inefficiently. What you want to do is you want to spread your voters out as much as possible to win as many seats as possible and win a bunch of seats by, say, 52 or 53%. But the danger in fast-growing states like Texas and Georgia is that they're not only growing really fast, but they're becoming more diverse, and they're becoming diverse in ways that sort of benefit Democrats. And so, a bunch of those 52 or 53 districts, if you don't do it right, could end up flipping to Democrats by the end of the decade. But, on the plus side, Republicans will have the benefit of more data and technology and be able to draw perhaps more pernicious gerrymanders, despite all of this, right? I mean, so they kind of know what's coming and they can kind of plan for it. And that's sort of the danger of all of this. But again, they will have a tough choice in many places, in Texas in particular, about whether to, go for the gusto and try to maximize seats, or, give up a few seats to Democrats to shore up some other seats.
Sochi, you have known for a long time as an observer of politics, as a practitioner, that the suburbs are changing. This is not actually news. But given the demographic realities that we're talking about, how does that then shape how Democrats approach 2022 and beyond?
Well, I think that Democrats learned in the last election that they have to talk to voters everywhere, and you have to start organizing now. And in the suburbs, as you were talking about, they are becoming more diverse, and you must have those conversations now, just not the October right before. And we often see the party invest in African-American and Latino communities right before an election, but now we're seeing them invest earlier than ever before. And so I will be keeping an eye on those places, because Democrats need to make more progress in the suburbs. And if we want to continue to keep the House and the Senate and make progress in 2024.
I mean, Michael, we've never seen the type of full frontal assault on voting rights in our democracy that we are seeing in this moment. And yet there's long been talks about readdressing redistricting, readdressing gerrymandering. What would it look like to reform these processes at scale?
Well, there is a bill currently before Congress in the Senate called the For the People Act, which is S1 in the Senate and HR 1 in the House, which would ban partisan gerrymandering by statute. The Supreme Court said in 2019 that there are no partisan gerrymandering claims that you can bring under the federal Constitution. But Congress has the power to set the rules for how congressional districts are drawn, and they have the power under the For the People Act to prescribe a ban on partisan gerrymandering. The For the People Act also would strengthen protections for communities of color who are, about to get shellacked in redistricting without the For the People Act. But that, of course, would require the Senate to take action soon. The data that states will need to draw maps comes out in the middle of August, and after that, it's off to the races. And although something can be done after that, it will be a lot more complicated to do. And so, really, the next 5 to 6 weeks in the Senate are essential, and that means doing something and probably do something about the filibuster as well.
So, Xochitl, Michael led me exactly where I wanted to go, which brings me to you, which is, do you think it is the understanding of Democrats on the Hill that they have those 5 to 6 weeks left to figure this out?
I think that it's going to be a challenge here. I think that you've seen Democrats struggle in their negotiations and back and forth. They must do something now. We control the House, the Senate, and the White House here. And so now is the time to act. You're going to continue to see some frustration in the Democratic Party if you don't get something done now.